9 Constructors' Championships, 7 Drivers' World Titles, 114 wins. When we talk about Williams, we're talking about one of the greatest institutions in the history of motorsport. A name that conjures up images of Nigel Mansell wrestling with his car, Alain Prost being surgical, Nelson Piquet being audacious, and Damon Hill reaching glory. Frank Williams and Patrick Head built an empire on a simple philosophy. The car is the star, the driver is a component, and for a long time that formula worked brilliantly. But there's a dark side to this trajectory of success, a facet that's rarely discussed in Formula One's official documentaries. Over the decades, Williams wasn't just a springboard to success. For many, it became a labyrinth their careers never came out of the same. There's an unsettling pattern of generational talents who arrived at Grove with the world at their feet and left through the back door, their reputation scratched and their prime left behind. Did Williams, in its obsessive pursuit of technical perfection, end up destroying the careers of those who sat in its cockpits? Or did the team's environment merely expose weaknesses those drivers already had? Today, we're going to dive deep into the journeys of 3 drivers who lived the Williams dream, but ended up waking into a sporting nightmare. Brace yourself, because the story behind the scenes of a championship-winning team can be far crueler than it looks on Sunday broadcasts. Our investigation begins with the most emblematic case of all. Jacques Villeneuve. Picture the scene. 1996. Villeneuve arrives in Formula One fresh off a crushing victory at the Indianapolis 500 and an IndyCar title. He wasn't just a rookie, he was a rock star with colored hair and a defiant attitude. In his very first race, he takes pole position and nearly wins. In his first year, he takes the title fight to the final round against his teammate, the veteran Damon Hill. In 1997, the peak. He defeats none other than Michael Schumacher in one of the most tense finales in the category's history. Villeneuve was king of the world. He was only 26 and seemed destined to dominate the decade ahead. But what came next was a decline as rapid as his rise. The problem is that the Williams of 1997 was a structure in transition. Adrian Newey, the aerodynamics genius, was already on his way out to McLaren. Renault, which supplied the dominant engines of the era, decided to leave the category as an official supplier. Suddenly, the car that was the best on the grid became merely good. And at Williams, a merely good car is a political death sentence. Villeneuve, driven by a loyalty many would call stubbornness, stayed with the team in 1998 with a Mechachrome engine that was nothing more than an outdated version of the previous Renault. He spent the year fighting for crumbs, watching the train of history pass by as McLaren and Ferrari took center stage. The central issue here is the environment. Williams was never known for embracing its drivers. Frank Williams was famous for treating drivers as replaceable employees. When the results stopped coming, Villeneuve found himself isolated. His confidence, which was his greatest weapon, began to look like arrogance to those on the outside. By the end of 1998, his reputation was no longer that of a potential multiple champion, but that of someone who'd gotten lucky being in the right car at the right time. He then made the decision that would seal his fate, founding Bar with his manager. If Villeneuve had left Williams in 1998 for a McLaren or even a Ferrari, would his story have been different? Probably. At Williams, he lived at the top, but the freefall the team went through dragged him down with such force that he never recovered his shine. He came in as a legend and left as a promise that aged far too fast. But if Villeneuve's case is about the loss of technical competitiveness, Juan Pablo Montoya's case is about the waste of pure, raw talent. In the early 2000s, Formula One was under the total dominance of Michael Schumacher. Every driver seemed intimidated by the German, except one. Montoya arrived from kart in 2001 with a driving style that felt like a punch to the gut of the category's etiquette. He was aggressive, pulled off impossible overtakes, and respected no hierarchies. The Williams-BMW partnership was, on paper, the force capable of bringing down Ferrari. The BMW engine was the most powerful on the grid, capable of pushing the car to absurd speeds. So why was Montoya never champion with Williams? The answer lies in a tragic combination of operational failures and disastrous ego management. In 2003, Montoya had his big chance. He had the speed, he had the momentum, and he had a car that, on certain circuits, was unbeatable. But the Williams of that era was a team that made basic strategic errors and suffered from a mechanical reliability that left the driver stranded at crucial moments. On top of that, the team's philosophy of not establishing a clear number one driver meant that Montoya and his teammate Ralf Schumacher took precious points off each other, while at Ferrari everything revolved around Michael. Montoya felt underrated and poorly supported. He could see the team wasn't willing to fight for him the way he fought on track. The wear and tear was so great that, still in 2003, he signed with McLaren to race only in 2005. Imagine the situation. He spent the entire 2004 season at a team knowing he was on his way out. That limbo drained his motivation. Montoya spent his best years, the peak of his physical and mental form, waiting for a project that always seemed to be one adjustment away from the title. By the time he finally reached McLaren, he was already mentally exhausted by Formula One politics. Williams didn't destroy Montoya with a bad car. It destroyed him through frustration. It gave him the fastest engine in the world, but didn't know how to give him the structure needed to turn that speed into a world title. The man who should have been Schumacher's great rival ended up leaving the category prematurely to race in NASCAR, leaving behind an enormous what if? And speaking of Schumacher, we come to the third name on this list, Ralf Schumacher. Being the brother of the greatest winner in history was already a heavy burden, but in his early years, Ralf proved he had legitimate talent. He wasn't there just because of the name. At Williams, between 1999 and 2004, Ralf had moments of pure brilliance. He won races with authority, was extremely fast in qualifying, and for a long time was considered one of the most technical drivers on the grid. The problem is that Ralf Schumacher's Williams was a roller coaster. One weekend, the car was perfect. The next, it was an aerodynamic disaster. That chronic inconsistency stopped Ralf from ever mounting a solid title campaign. He was stuck in a cycle of unfulfilled promises. Every new season, Williams said it had solved its stability problems, and every season the team lost ground to Ferrari, McLaren, and later Renault. Ralf ended up becoming the face of that almost era at Williams. Over time, public perception shifted. He went from being seen as a future champion to being seen as an expensive driver who didn't deliver the final result. Williams ground down his public image. By the time he finally left for Toyota, he was no longer the fast young man who'd scared the veterans. He was a driver who seemed to have lost the sacred fire. Williams didn't protect him from his brother's shadow. On the contrary, the lack of consistent results in a car that should have won only made the comparisons with Michael even crueler. But now we need to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. It would be unfair to lay all the blame on the team alone. After all, Williams gave these men machines capable of winning Grands Prix. The real problem with Williams in the 2000s was what we might call the upper midfield trap. The team was too good for a driver to want to leave, but not competitive enough for him to become champion. This created a paralyzing effect. Talented drivers like Villeneuve, Montoya, and Ralf got stuck in the hope of next year. Next year the car will be better. Next year the BMW engine will be more reliable. Next year the aerodynamics will be sorted. And in that waiting, the golden years of a professional athlete, which are extremely short, slipped away. We also have to consider the counter-argument. Were these drivers really the elite material we imagined? After leaving Williams, Jacques Villeneuve never again finished on the podium with any regularity and struggled at every other team he raced for. Juan Pablo Montoya, at McLaren, struggled to adapt and often performed below Kimi Räikkönen. Ralf Schumacher, at Toyota, never managed to lead the project toward the wins everyone expected. This raises a provocative question. Did Williams destroy these careers, Or was it the only team capable of extracting the maximum from drivers who had clear limitations? Perhaps Williams's genius, even in decline, was building cars that made very good drivers look like absolute geniuses for short stretches. It's a double-edged sword. On one hand, the management of Frank Williams and Patrick Head was harsh, cold, and often demotivating. They firmly believed the driver was the least important part of the equation. On the other hand, they delivered tools that, if used well, led to the top of the podium. What seems to have happened was an existential failure of communication. Williams expected the driver to simply operate the machine without complaint, while the drivers of this new generation, more media-savvy and more demanding, needed an emotional and strategic support that the old guard at Grove refused to give. In the end, Williams probably didn't destroy these careers in the literal sense of the word. There was no sabotage, no plan to ruin anyone. What there was the systematic consumption of time and potential through a promise of glory that never fully materialized. For Villeneuve, Montoya, and Ralph, Williams was like a siren from Greek mythology. The song was wonderful, the ship looked powerful, but the final destination was the rocks of technical mediocrity and personal frustration. They joined the team as heroes who would inherit the Earth and left as tired veterans, questioned by critics and fans alike. The story of Williams is full of trophies, but it's also a graveyard of expectations. It shows that, in Formula One, it isn't enough to have a glorious name on your back or a powerful engine in your chassis. You have to know how to manage human capital to understand that the driver isn't just a part, but the beating heart of the project. Villeneuve, Montoya, and Ralf Schumacher were victims of an era in which Williams refused to evolve its mindset, even as the world of Formula One changed around it. They paid the price for believing that the team's history was a guarantee of future success. And as we well know, on track, history doesn't push the car. What pushes the car is innovation, support, and flawless execution. Things that Williams, sadly, forgot to deliver to these three great talents. The question left for you is this: was Williams really the villain in these stories? Or did these drivers simply lack the ability to carry the weight of such a great team? Leave your opinion in the comments.